shoot, forget to open Game Maker. Oh no. Alright. So, I'm booting up Game Maker on this one screen, but I should be over here in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put OBS over onto this screen so I can have good idea of what I'm doing. I'm just going ahead and I'm going to make a new project here in a second. But alright, hey guys, it's SharpZ. So we're going to be doing stuff a little differently today. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, so don't you usually have everything set up ahead of time and it's a screen cap and you're working on your computer? Yes, right now, oh shoot, I need to clean that one up. Give me 1 second. Right now, we are going to work on a little bit of a different aspect of this. See if that, I think part of it's just this. I'm using my laptop camera for this one section. Let me turn the light over here so it just so you can at least somewhat see my face. Let's see. Yeah, that works a little bit better. Now, let's get to the part that I was actually going to talk about. So, I considered a few things with the current build of the game, and I felt it would be best if we pretty much restart the build. Now, as a part of that, I wanted to talk about why, but also we need to talk about something important for that, and that is controls. And I had an expo marker. Where did I put it? Ah, yes, the beauty of me being an idiot. It's the one part of this channel that's remained consistent since we started like 10 years ago. Where did I leave that marker? Seriously. Wait, is it sitting? Shoot, I know I had a black expo. I just don't remember where I put it. We're just gonna roll with the green one today, I guess. So, for the sake of this, I'm gonna need to. Oh, there it is. Alright, never mind. For the sake of this, I'm going to need to start by explaining something. So, I'm sure everyone knows what one of these is. This is a Switch Pro controller. The reason I have this right now is what we're going to do is essentially draw one up on the screen here. Let me check how well it captures it from over there, because depending on how well it captures it, it might be a better idea to... Let's see here. Yeah, you can't really see anything I do on it. Alright, change of plans. We're moving over to the other, yeah, that's right, boys. Traditional form of capture is back. Because we can't figure this out right now, and I don't have the energy to try to even do this right now. I charge my calculator, but I still don't. Alright, so let's just do something for temporary purposes. I'm going to enlarge my camera here. And let's grab this and see if we can't Yeah, you know what? This might be a good idea. Let me just move my chair out of the way. At least a little bit out of the way. And we're going to work on this. So, I put the Pro Controller back over there. I'll grab it now so I can go ahead and give this example. So this right here, I'm just kind of using this as your example of a standard controller. 2 sticks, 4 face buttons, a D-pad, start, select, and usually you have 2, if it's a console controller, 2 console-oriented buttons. Trigger, bumper. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start by drawing our controller shape here, which I'm not very good at, so I'm just going to, you're going to see me use my finger to erase a lot today, most likely. So it's not going to be the most beautiful looking thing. But for our purposes today, I think that'll be fine. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I usually just do because Nintendo has their plus and minus buttons. So I usually just put a plus and a minus, and then plus is start, minus is select. Now granted, a lot of controllers nowadays have removed their start and select in lieu of other buttons. If I remember correctly, PlayStation, for example, most of the time when you emulate something on the new on PlayStation 4, you have to use the touchpad to emulate start and select. But generally speaking, you have 2 or 3 buttons where it's more so your out-of-the-way purpose buttons. Like, we're not talking like stuff like the Ouya, but if I were to pull up like your standard Xbox controller, it might have less buttons than that. But I mean, still gonna have them. So what I usually do is that's your bumper, and then for triggers I like to put a pad out here so I know trigger, line. Alright, so this right here, this is our controller. We're going to try to map everything, and my idea that I had was we're going to split it right down the middle. This side's going to be one character, this side's going to be the other. Mainly because this is a game that's focused on multiplayer, and while I know that as an RPG it probably will have more complex mechanics, the controls should not inherently be more complex. So essentially what we're going to do is make one side and then mirror it. The only issue that we might run into is, so it's turn-based, so I don't think the controls should be too big an issue for most people. Because I had 2 options I was considering. Number 1, keep it like this, but you also have your buttons right here where you can switch between the 2. But that kind of feels, I don't know how to put it. If you're switching between the 2, I don't feel like it really complements the themes of the game well, because I want it to feel like it's 2 people working together rather than switching between 2 people. Like one person can do one thing and one can do the other. So I'm going to keep this whole idea, because I like the idea of you have to control them each with one side of the controller, especially since the duet battle system is the key of these games. So, you have your 4 face buttons, and you have the bumper and trigger. Now let's go ahead and do this thing that's kind of obvious. So, obviously your stick is going to be to move. And I think one mechanic I want to add in is if you click the stick in, then that is your lock. So that locks your movement down. So you're not going to be able to move your character anymore after you push that stick in. Well, lock/unlock, excuse me. Yeah, it lets you lock your character in a specific place. So if you want to aim, or if you want to... Actually, you know what would be a better idea? What if we combine this with a different mechanic? What if we had guard? So if you guard, you're staying in one place and you choose a guard direction, but then the two buttons up top are going to have somewhat of an impact on this. So if you hold that down to guard, it puts you it keeps your character still, and if you press it again, then it goes from your guard stance to your block stance. All right. Now we have a few more things. So I want to go ahead and look at, so plus and minus, both of those I think are your one exception to where you can actually have that do two separate things, because obviously I like to make plus pause. And then minus should be inventory. Just, well, how about we do inventory slash menu? Because we don't know exactly what's going to be on that menu, but the ability to pause and enter the menu is a good idea. Well, excuse me, an in-game menu. So things like your maps, your character equipment, yada yada. Just all that listed out. Granted, I like the idea of multiplayer, of it requesting to open the menu rather than just flat out doing that. So that's what we might end up doing. But I digress. So, bumper. I say we make the bumper here some kind of switch mechanic. So I like the idea of our harmonics being tied to one of the bumpers. So you can press that button to switch whatever harmonic they're using. Actually, you know what? No, hear me out. What if instead we had this instead be stance change? So, with that stance change, essentially what it does is it changes you into a stance where you can attack out of. Because once you're using the stick, that's your basic movement. But this changes you into a movement stance. So you don't, pretty much you're not moving, but you do have the ability to do things like switch. You do have the ability to do things like cast spells or, I mean, the only other idea that I want to put into here is maybe, because I want whoever's playing this to have to play as both characters, because the interplay between the two is the key to the system, so I feel like it makes sense that's divided between the two. And then in multiplayer, it would make it easier to adapt. The only issue is in multiplayer, that makes half of this controller useless. So maybe a switch button's not the worst idea. So let's just make this switch spell. But I do want to keep the idea of half the controller does stuff for one and half of it does stuff for the other. I'm just trying to think this whole thing through. Because if we split it in half, I'm somewhat worried about it being overwhelming. But the thing I find more worrying about splitting it directly in half is the multiplayer aspect. You'll have half of a controller that pretty much mirrors the other, and that would lead to a whole lot of issues. Actually, you know what? What if instead of splitting it in half, we do something a little different here? So, switch spell. Yes, you would click it in, and then you aim the stick around to... Actually, you know what I just realized? What if we make one of these aim, and the other one... Yeah, actually, yeah, because if we do that, then this can be sprint. This right here could be aim. And this... I wish I had, I might have something to prop it up on. That might actually be a good idea. Give me a second. What if, actually, yeah, That might be the best idea I've had all day. So let's prop it up on the chair. Oh boy. Yeah, as you can see, we are very prepared for everything we do here. So, I think, you know, because we want, obviously, to have... I want the mechanics for your ranged weapons and your melee weapons to be separate. So, I want this, for example, to be the attack button. At least on Switch. Because, usually speaking, for Switch, your Y button, that's your attack. So... and keep that as is. We don't need a jump button, so that makes things a little easier. See, my only issue is, what are we going to do? Let me go ahead and make sure that chat is actually turned on. Alright, live chat's on. There we go. The key issue here is, what are we going to do about, like, this other half? Because, it would feel weird in one way. Like, I like the idea of maybe you can control both with the sticks, but at the same time, it's like, I would have to replace one of these buttons with a button to switch, and the obvious idea to do it is a button to command for multiplayer, or callouts. Let's see here. Actually, yeah, this might be a good switch. Okay, so aim. Actually, you know what? No. Let's go with the shooter controls. So aim, fire, right here. Usually in something like Call of Duty, we'd have a face button be switch weapon, but I want to keep all these face buttons to have. I want those to mostly relate to things like your backpack. So, you know, that and pressing these two bumpers, that kind of makes sense with that. So, maybe, right here would be switch, projectile, and make this one guard. So that way we have two different buttons here, each of which are doing completely separate things. I think we have a few more that we can actually go ahead and cross off our list here. So if this is our character switch, I say we make this like a control for maybe map or camera. We need something to do with the rest of these. Press it, yeah. So we have guard, attack, skill, item, and maybe we could make this something like throw. So one idea I had was a throw versus toss mechanic. So with this aim fire, for example, actually, skill, let me make this grab. Because while I like the idea of being able to use your stashed items, yeah. Let's see here. Grab from bag. That and maybe a turn timer wouldn't be the worst idea. So let's say turn timer, but you get to extend the timer with various things you can do. So that, because honestly, that feels like a worthwhile system idea. Grab from bag, and then I mean honestly, we don't need to use every face button. Actually, what if we put switch projectile to this? We can make like our holster command. So harmonics. That's just the magic system. And so I'm just using that. And this would be what you would press for ranged weapon. So that lets you switch between the two. Yeah, so projectile switching wouldn't be tied to that anymore. Oh, yeah, no. Actually, this makes sense, because all three of these would tie back into this system. Yeah, aim, fire. So aim would hold you still, and fire would do something similar. And it's going to vary based on what you're doing here. That and it's for if we have any AoE attacks or attacks where it fires in a various area, then it would be a good way to add a little bit of a different mechanic there. Our guards in there, I think we need to do one. We need to do something with this bumper. Yeah, let's remove the grab from here and put the grab here. Alright. Tossing versus throwing. Yeah, so up is... why don't we make up, instead of grab from bag, open. I think A, yeah, A is right there. We can make this just an interact. So that will be for things like chests or environmental items. Yeah, I think that's not the worst way to start, because we don't really need anything right here. That, and when we enter multiplayer, yeah, what it could do is we can have it switch from, so when you're playing single player, it would be a 3-turn system based off of either speed or character level or something, where what it's going to do is it's going to have, you have chorus go, then you have symphonia go, well, or symphonia, then chorus, then enemies. I mean, we could, because the only issue with splitting it directly down the middle like this and saying, oh, everything from this side is going to carry over to that side is, you don't really have a lot of options in that case, because like we would have to limit the amount of buttons that you're using. It would clunk things up a little bit, and on top of that, then you wouldn't be able to, because for single player, the only issue that I think we're running into right now is how do we make sure that both characters, maybe what we can have it do is you move one character first, and then that move starts, and then the other character moves you move the other character alongside the one you just moved. I don't know. Because my issue is I don't want to have an AI partner. Because number one, that's more programming issues. Number two, it doesn't really fit with what I'm trying to do. Actually, why don't we just do AI partner? Because if we did that, then we can just drop the turn-based system entirely. Because initially what I was doing was making a turn-based mixed with a top-down mixed with a... turn-based mixed with top-down action game, where it was environmental strategy stuff. Because if we stick to a traditional grid-based strategy game, the issue that you run into is how limiting it is. But I like the idea of this, because this lets you... Pretty much this lets you play characters how you want to. I mean, that, and then if we added in, like, say you had your guest party member, you could maybe... I don't know. I mean, obviously what we can do is we can always modify this, but I don't know if we're going to completely restart the build today. But this just kind of covers the basis of what I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual coding part. So, let's actually go ahead and I'm going to start with a new project just because that will make the rest of this a whole lot easier to do. So if we do a new project right here, new blank. Remake build 2. Let's go. And we're going to start by creating a few objects here. So we're going to have, go ahead and create group, and this will be our master objects. Actually, let's do definition objects, and I'm going to move that so it's actually facing me now. So these are going to be objects where it defines things like game variables. So let's use this one for example. This is going to be our game rules. And I'm going to completely separate the character. Wanted to check one thing. So what we can actually do is we can add tags to a few of these variables. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a few overarching variables here. So we have O living. So this will be anything that's alive. Let's change it to O melee. So that way we have something where it's just our melee attacks. Create object. O projectiles. So this way we have stuff where it will be able to read these variables. Now, I want to ideally make this a system where it's fairly easy for me to go in and modify what I need to. Let's go ahead and make one object just outside of the, actually let's here, create group, and we're going to make this one character. Alright. With O living, we can define a few variables. I want to make a new one called create object O controller. So we need to go ahead and add a few variables. GML code's what I usually use. Don't ask for this project or ever really. I never use GML visual. It's just, is there a reason why it's, give me a second. Yeah, for some reason, it never showed me that yellow border before, and now I can see it around my screen. I think it's just since OBS is recording, it just changed a few things in the last few updates or something. So I want to go ahead and make all the, we're going to do that. We're going to need a step event, and here we go. So create. This is going to be our character controller. So we need to go ahead and start by defining a few. Let's see here. Variable setup. So I think what we need to do first. So we need our HSP equals HSP. VSP equals VSP. Well, actually, let's do it like this. So, movement. Health. Yeah, let's do stats. States, excuse me. Cannot ignore input equals false. So by default, it's just going to recognize your input when we get around to that. With this, we should also have it do something where it, so player underscore num equals, since we're just at 1 right now, we're just going to set it to 1. So this way we can actually change our controls out based on various factors. So actually, let's put this right here. States, multiplayer. And I say that we say the controller's default okay, so move states, movement. Let's do one more thing right here. IDs, so let's just do play ID equals 0. So the player ID is going to be something where it's, if you're in single player, there's going to be a button that will let you cycle between it. If not, it's going to realize that and keep your variables the same. So if you have 2 players, you're going to have a player ID equals 1 and a player ID equals 2. The only reason it is 0 right here is because the... Wait, I'm going to go ahead and full screen that to make this a little easier to follow. And let's move that over to the side for now. Alright, play ID equals play underscore ID. So, we're going to go ahead and define controller var. So let's start with define controller. Alright, so key right equals key keyboard check VK. Sorry, one of my neighbors is being a piece of shit and not turning off his darn speakers again. Alright, key left equals keyboard check VK left key down keyboard check VK down key underscore up equals keyboard check VK up. Alright. So we have all of our keys set into here. And we're going to go, well, ignore input equals false. So we're going to make one here where it's going to say actually, let's do one thing. Play ID, yada yada. So basically what this object is it's the base code that's going to go into all players. So Symphonia and Chorus might have their own unique code on top of this. So for example, things like your harmonics listings, your special variables, this is going to decide how everything's controlled, however. So yep. And since this isn't a platformer, we're not adding gravity. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start by just making, I forgot I need to make a sprite for this. Let's go into our sprite section and create, I'm going to make 2 folders. I'm going to make a folder called placeholder, just so we can get this out of the way. Create object, and then we're gonna, because we can just do this really quickly. Oh, player, and let me go ahead and, no, that's an object. That's an object. I want to delete that. create sprite, excuse me. Edit image, and I'm just going to make something very simple. We're just going to do a pink box. And workspace 1. We need to open a room here really quickly just so we can actually test this thing. So that's a sprite. Workspace. Go up to O controller. Sprites, placeholder, sprite 1. There. And then room 1. Under controller object. There we go. Alright, so if ignore input equals false, let's see here. So we actually do need to define a few things here. X equals X plus HSP, Y equals Y plus BSP. And I'm going to go ahead and say that both of these will, let's just have them both equal 0. So that way we can get a fairly good idea of it. Ignore input equals false for the state. Alright, if ignore input equals false, and let's do one more. Walk SP equals 10. HSP equals key right minus key left, and VSP equals key up minus key down, and close the bracket. It might give me one issue. Alright, yeah, just key down minus key up. And let's go ahead and up that. Wait, okay. And then times walk SP. All right. That way, oh shoot, yeah, no. I need to bracket these. Order of operations and all that. PIMDOS. Let's see here, did that fix it? Alright, so we have character movement. That was easy enough. Let's go ahead and do collision. Oh, I need a wall to do that. Let's do O solid. With these, we can just pretty much define our variables. I'm going to go ahead and do a few things with this controller variable while I'm thinking about it. Variable definitions. And so, let's see here. Play ID zero. And then we can do, so by default, it's going to say the player number equals 1. What we're going to have it do is if it recognizes that it equals 2, put equals false. Key right, key left, walk SP, yada yada. Yeah, it goes from the top down. So it's going to, it goes from the bottom up. So it analyzes the bottom code first. So we'll prioritize that. If X if place meeting X plus HSP Oh, I see why. Yeah, because it's gonna be a negative if it goes the other way. Yeah. Okay, X plus HSP, Y. Oh, solid. Then HSP equals 0. If place meeting X Y plus HSP. Oh, solid. Wait, Y plus, VSP. Then ESP equals 0. And I'm going to go ahead and back into the workspace here, and I'm going to do one thing. We're going to go over to our definition objects, and I'm just going to create another sprite here just so we can have something for the walls. Say edit image. Yeah, let's go with that gray. And bucket it in. Go back up here, go into a solid, and we're going to select sprite 2. Go over to the room, and I want to be able to test this, so here we go. So if we hit so it does have this small gap. But honestly, I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, it has a small gap there. The only issues we might run into are later when we begin to add more objects and all that crazy stuff, but yeah, it seems fine. So our controller object is set up here for movement. Next thing we need to do is we need to, if ignore input equals false. So all of your controls are going to be listed here, and then there's going to be one conditional branch for the switch control saying if there's multiple players, switch or inventory will act differently. But for right now, I think that's a good start. What else do we need here? Yeah, all these can be pretty much copy pasted onto an enemy fairly easy. Definition objects, characters. I'm going to rename this to players. And then we're going to make a different folder called we're going to name this enemy. Yeah, so is it all ordered by room, script, shaders? We can work on shaders and sequences on another day, but for right now, I say that we keep working on the basic controller aspects. Mainly because what we need is not necessarily a system to switch the harmonics right away. I'm not too worried about that. Let me look back at because I have that full board right there. That pretty much says everything we need. Aim guard, sprint, pause, inventory menu. I'm gonna grab a drink. I'll be right back. Whew. Alright, I'm back. I just need some caffeine in my system. Yeah, placeholder sprites, I'm fine with these being called like Sprite 1, Sprite 2. What we're also going to do is put, states false. Mainly what that means is it's going to completely ignore your input. Because our arrays, that's going to be how we determine everything. Projectiles, that's going to work off the system that's already in Game Maker. So it's going to be a fairly simple thing to do. I mean, keyboard and mouse controls are going to be fairly different regardless. Because it's mainly designed to work off twin stick controls. There's just a lot of games like that where you can just take twin stick and make that work better. Anyway, pausing. I'm trying to think what we could do right now to kind of catch up with the other one a bit. Because this feels like a better basis for what we need. It's that, and mainly I want to keep the faces and design simple. We could work on defining a few of these variables. So, living. We're going to set the controller. We'll have it override a few things, but we're gonna go ahead and do something for the living section here. So add events, creation, and it's going to say variables for living objects. So this is everything from allies to natural entities to enemies. So I would say we have a few that we are going to put here. We're going to put our stats, health, data. So if we want to have some kind of a book system where you can, some kind of like a Pokemon's Pokédex, but it's for different enemies. You know, you can look through a bestiary of some kind. We can have that. And actually, right between here, let's go ahead and put in states. So what we can do here is once we define our states, we can put in state immunities. Now for specific enemies, this would be kind of useful. So if you have, for example, a character that is immune to fire, we can just go ahead and put they're immune to this. Stats. So I say that we have a stat array where whenever you have 2 or 3 characters, it's going to, you know, the stat, usually I would try to put stats on an array, but I think for this it might be a better idea to just define our stats out right here. So attack equals attack. Actually, let's abbreviate these. ATK equals ATK. DEF equals DEF. HP equals HP. Actually, no, this would be under state, so we don't need to really. Wait, actually, yeah, no. Health does need its own section. Sorry. Health. SPD equals SPD. MP equals MP. So that's all of our primary things. Wait, okay, HP max equals HP max. MP max equals MP max. And then we're going to go into our, let's see here. Alright, so let's just do a can die equals can die. So that that's mainly for things like your player characters and if you want to have an unwinnable boss battle. So that way, even if someone were to cheat and say use the most powerful attack on the game in the game on an early boss, it wouldn't be able to kill them. So can die equals can die. For most, that's going to be turned on. Others, it's going to be turned off. And then under data here, this is where we're going to do one more thing. Entity ID equals entity ID. So for pretty much all of these, they're going to be given a distinct number in a system. That way, if we want to do something unique, we can say the player ID, that is essentially for playable characters. So that is saying of the characters on the field, you'll always be player ID 1, you'll always be player ID 2. It's going to work essentially differently from that system in that this will not be defined by who's controlling which character, but will rather be defined by what number the entity is. And I say to make it easier, what we could do is we could say hero characters are all positive entities, enemies are negative, and then actually no, hero and nature are positive entity, enemies are negative entity. That way enemies won't attack. That way both sides will kind of ignore them, except for maybe here and there with enemies they might go after them. But we would be able to modify the code and maybe have a third classification under here. Actually, yeah, let's put something here. Combatant equals combatant, and then we're gonna give them all like specific arrays and all that. But what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to set a good base so that when we do get to the point where we're working on stuff like AI and all that, it's not going to be too hard to do. That, and there is a pathfinding command that has recently been introduced into GameMaker. So if I go in search, for example, GML pathfinding, motion planning is the new thing that they have. So tries to compute a collision-free path for the instance. So MP linear step. So X goal step size, the speed the instance moves in pixels per step. So our only issue is how do we make sure that it doesn't. Alright, let's actually do something. I'm going to go ahead and go into our enemies, and I'm going to create object O enemy. And so it's going to follow whatever object we have right here. Speed the instance moves in pixels per step. So with this, what we can actually do is give the enemies a different function. P potential settings. Alright, so let's create functions MP. So create, okay, it's a global grid. With the cell resolution. Okay, so we'll cover the room and give you a cell resolution. Yeah, I think our best options might be let me think through something. So 64 by 64 sprites. So if we were to go with something that's like a 64 by 64, we're talking about that size. I mean, granted, it might end up being a little smaller than that. But I think if we tell it to go 64 by 64 pixels, that will be fine. Mainly because you have a lot of space for detail within these. Like I'm just going to someone randoms, but if you look at right here, like that's still a lot of detail for 64 by 64. But see, that's probably, let's go with, it draws it in a 64 by 64. So even if players don't fall in that grid, NP grid path. See, so what it's going to do is it's going to define a goal. We can essentially have the NP grid oh, you can actually convert it into an array. Okay. I'm brand new to this motion planning system. So potential functions are the basic of, they work by making the instance use a step toward a particular goal or position while trying to go straight if possible. But so we can essentially have these let you assign a specific XY coordinate as a goal, or a specific object XY coordinate. So if it's a player, it's going to automatically readjust. Okay. Speed instance moves. See, if you put the object, it's going to say object to ignore. Local path can be an object index, and instance ID, or the special keyword all. So that way it's going to check and see if there's anything blocking its path. The potential path, I think, will path functions. Okay, I see here. So the potential path, I should probably add a debug mode into the game rules to check these out. But all these path systems and all that, you can easily have it calculate the path, and then the enemy or object's going to go down it. Okay, that's cool. I have not experimented with NP functions at all, so it's going to be fun. So I'm going to actually create another object here, and we're going to create an, excuse me, Control Z that. Let's go ahead and delete that. That's not what I meant to do. Oh, it's enemy. Okay. Add event create, add event. So we're going to do, actually we need to do one more thing while I'm thinking here. Room 1, add the game rules in, go to the workspace here. Oh, controller, persistent, and game rules is going to be persistent. So with both of these, they're going to constantly exist. What I'm probably going to do with this game rules object is this is going to determine things like what mode are you in, how many players are there, and then it's going to feed that information back into the other variables. So this will exist beforehand and essentially create what you need if you're playing multiplayer or define how the single player works. So I usually like to leave this object as its own thing. And I'm going to do one more thing. We're going to go ahead and give it a color of red just so it stands out a bit. And I'm going to go into the enemy code here, and we're going to work on a create and a step event. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add one more sprite here just so we have one to work with. Now, scripts are going to be our interesting thing, where it is, I guess we could make it purple, bright yellow, yeah, let's go with the bright yellow, just for now. And then we're going to go ahead into our enemy object, and assign this sprite, placeholder, sprite 3. See, what I usually like to do with our sprites is then when we get to melee attacks, I usually will make 2 sprites, one with the standard player collision and one with the attack collision. And that way you can easily define, hey, this is where the attack starts, this is where the player ends. Anyway, so, and I'm going to assign it one parent object in a bit. It's going to have a parent object of the living object. Same thing for the controller object, etc. Alright, so what we can do here. Potential path. Alright, so it's going to be MP linear step object, so it's going to be O controller dot X, O controller dot Y, and O solid. And that's just a very basic setup. Let's see if that works. Let's go ahead and put this full. Up speed. Let's say speed's 10. Oh, shoot, forgot to actually put the object in. Room 1. Enemy. Now let's take a look at it. Oh, yep, it knows what to do. What if I take this and I put it right here? Then it should know a way to get around it, right? Alright, I need to slow it down a little bit. Enemy. Go back into the enemy code here where it's a step. I'm just going to set that to a 1 so we can actually test this. So here we go. Okay, so it's gonna... It follows our player object now. It's slower than we are, granted, but... Oh yeah, that and if you're actually out of line of sight. See, what we can ideally do is we can set it to check if the player's within a specific range. Okay, MP linear step, MP potential step. Check for collision. MP potential path. Path functions. So, okay, we're going to work on that a little bit later, but I just want to experiment with how the MP basically worked. Now, what I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and go into our controller options, and we're going to add one more setting here. And what this is going to be is we need the ability to switch characters. And I think the best way to do that is to have essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have a setting. We'll add it a little bit later, but for right now, that or they could just be tagged together up until then. So rather than it being two separate characters, you're literally side by side fighting, and it just switches from one character to the other. That'll work. Yeah, because that way you can switch who your lead is, but you still have both characters in it. See, I'm just trying to think, because I definitely want both characters to be there, but also, yeah, maybe you press down to switch who your lead is, and then when you're playing multiplayer, it just splits between the two characters. But yeah, it will draw, so you can have it draw paths. I know how to have it draw a line and check, so essentially what we're probably going to do is work with this system that they've implemented. Because it seems like even though enemies won't be working off the same HSP VSP, it works better for any AI that they work off something different. We can also have it pull variables, but the entity ID is mostly for our organization, but it also allows you to have unique instances without having to constantly reference the other event. I want to say we've only been at this for like an hour and a half. I want to do maybe one or two more things before I go. But yeah, we have states, and then the rest of this is going to all be combination. Let's do one more. Object O harmonic system. So this is going to be under game rules where it's a new object. So create, and then for every single entity, it's going to have up to two. So for elements, let's just say that we give them a system of IDs where it's numbers from 1 to 10. And then have it say if this instance has this number, yada yada, and then when we go up, we're essentially just going to make it the... Here, give me 1 second to check something with this. So, I'm going to go into my drive and see if I already have this. Recent. This one's actually gone pretty far. Code reposit, course Symphonis, design document, CS reprise. Okay. Movement, while running, single player, yada yada. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, J wouldn't have to be thrown into this. So it is A through I. Those are your default elements. So if we... Wait, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. And then we even have room for one more. So that's 9 elements. So that actually that's 8 elements. So that works perfectly. So if we have the ID be something like, here, let me just pull up a sheet. So it would go like this. So let's say fire equals 1, because we actually can't have it equal 0 for this. Ice equals 2. Water equals 3, yada yada, and then like shadow equals 4. Let's just use those as an example. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest in. Earth equals 5, light equals 6. I'll probably reorder these at some point. Electricity equals 7. I have it right here, yeah. Yep. Wind equals 8. And time is the only one that's the odd one out, so time equals 9, I think. 7, 8, 9. Yeah, because... So that's our elements. So for the combination states, it exponentially increases. So let's say, we start with 1. So Steam, which is fire and water will be 13. Magma, which is earth and fire, would be 15. Wind is kind of its own thing, but it would still be 18. So this way we can easily categorize everything. And then for the third step, we continue with the exact same idea of you take the next element ID and you toss it at the end of whatever the first two was. So let's just say we already have burn and wet, so steamed. Wait, glass plus judgment equals refracted. So, yeah, that would be. And then what we can also do, if we want to make this a little easier, so it's like if element ID 1 meets element ID 2, they're going to convert to element ID 12, and etc. And it keeps going down. Or even if we want to do something specific, we could say 1 meets 2, it equals 3. Because that actually makes sense. Because we want this chemistry system to actually work and have interplay. Granted, I do also like the idea of... Because the main issue we'll run into here is just we have more than 9 default states. So what we could do is we could also go into the negatives here. So if we... let's make our physical states negative, or we could even say that actually, you know what if we went the other way around? What if we said that the lowest numbers at the end, because then we can use 0. So yeah, we can use 0. So let's make physical equals 0, because that just makes sense. So let's say yeah, because if we put it at the end, essentially what it's going to be is let's say we had something where it went fire, then physical, it would be 10. And then if it went water, 103, but if you went the other way around, it would be 130. So it gives you space to differentiate it, but what I would probably do is have this state calculator work it's going to be more complicated than that, obviously, but I think that's the best way to go about a state calculator. As for our harmonics menu, let's work on that really quickly. My idea for that, let's just go harmonics menu. You're going to have your section where it has all your menu, yada yada, but I like the idea of it being so for each spell it would have a set of ID. So like your harmonic array, or let's just call it the skill array, because the harmonic system does link into this normal skills in some ways. So physical skills would have to impact and link into that system, but they're not going to be classified the same due to a few different aspects. So let's just say we have a few here. So we're going to have let's just call it the effect, actually attribute. And so we're going to do, the first one's going to be your element ID Then you have your state ID, state chance, your state ID, yeah, whenever I'm also going to have it be that whenever you summon the element, there will be one thing where it essentially reads it's going to have a team ID similar to how it used to be. With nature, it's going to have its own, and then if we want to add extra sides, so say we wanted a three-way battle, then we can add something there. With team ID is probably going to be the big thing. So we're going to have it so that enemies, if it's a negative number, it has a team ID of -1. If it's a player character, it has a team ID of 1. And if it is an enemy, it has an ID of 0. If it is nature, it has an ID of 0. So though if it has a team ID of 0, then it's going to take damage from both, but it's also going to be reacted to differently than both. Yeah, I think giving it some kind of DS list would probably be the best idea. For those of you who are not familiar with what a DS list is, I think I'm saying the right thing. So if I go here and I hit search and I go DS, yeah, there we go, DS. Is a data structure that stores information sequentially, much like an array. Very flexible, that permit you to add values at the end or insert them somewhere else. So if we were to do a DS list create, so what it's going to do for enemies, I guess, is we can have it create a DS list. Destroy, clear, empty. List add. Okay, ID. So we can actually, because this is mainly what you want to do things like saving and loading, because DS lists can be stored mainly through playthroughs. But it seems like they've added new systems in for things like saving, loading, the value of a key within a given DS map, DS grid. But anyway, yeah, we'll probably have to look into those systems for things like that. But state ID, and then, because all this right here, your attribute IDs, this is going to pretty much tell it how to interact with your chemistry system. So your state ID, and then I would say we add in one Boolean, which is your AOE. And then we're going to have your stat array, which would be, of course, the damage. If it's physical, I'm going to immediately have it say, have it go to being a physical attack. But if a weapon is imbued, then it will also count as a physical. I'll explain that later when we get around to it. But for stats, it's going to be damage, AoE, and then for this, let's just have it be the player ID is not going to be in this array because the team ID is not going to be in the array because there's no reason to check it. But also, when states hit if it's an AoE state, I like the idea of it being something where team state doesn't really matter at that point. So, for example, burn can be used as an AoE state given the right circumstances. What we could actually also do is we could have AoE and contagious. So that's kind of a catch-all term I use to say, is this one able to check squares or entities around it and leap from entity to entity? And then we have cure by touch and limit level. So limit level is going to be something that is, I think, a better way to approach the idea of things like the player not being able to move, of like things like limiting movement, limiting attacks, is to have something called limit level. So how limit level would essentially work is you would have a scale of 1 to 5. So like let's just say, and of course, so let's just say 0 is going to be your can move. So that's literally not going to be an issue at all. So usually this will be a 0. If it hits 1, then movement is slowed. If it's 2, movement is slowed. Attacks are limited. It's 3. Movement slowed. Attack cannot attack. 4. No movement. Wait, movement is, excuse me. No movement can attack. No movement, only guard. And let's just say 5 is, excuse me, no movement, can't attack. No movement, only knock back. And then we just have no movement. So that way, if we were to have something like, let's just say, a free state, no movement whatsoever. But if we go to, because I think I have all the states listed here. So frozen plus winded equals blizzard. So let's just say that we had a state like grief. So grief, for example, is going to make it so that you have like you can't move, but you can be pushed around. Or, excuse me, depression. What are the let me see here. I think I have a key right here. Tap to heal. Yeah, and if it's tap to heal, that means player can help you to heal. Contagious. So contagious is something that I am adding new for the states, since what I essentially want a specific entities to be able to do is, like, if we have fire, I want it to be able to look to the next, this is probably what we're going to actually use the DS grid for, is it's going to look in the square around it, and it's going to say, is there anything that I can spread to? And within a certain amount of pixels, it will check if it can spread to it. And if it can, it will. If it cannot, it will not. And then specific items which immediately will say, if I get into contact with fire and the entities next to me get into contact with fire, we will all combust immediately. So, like if you have an oil patch. Things like ice slicks and water will work on this principle too, where if you look at something like water, you can hit it with some of these elements and it will react like your traditional harmonic water would. So I would say like the elemental system's going to interact with the environment a lot. So we ideally want something where we can just assign it IDs. So like I'm going to probably have an environmental tile system, for example. Alright, wall running, teleportation, shoulder charge, javelin charge. All of these I think are going to be fine to just implement without much complication. I think for teleportation, all I'm going to have it do is you can put a portal down. I think I'm going to stick with the one idea I had for multiplayer. Single player, player moves, chorus, and Symphonia. The two are closely connected and cannot leave each other unless one is locked on and given a go command. We're going to tie that to the D-pad because when I look back at it, there's a whole lot more use of that D-pad than there really should be. And I like the idea of pretty much saying, hey, you have a few buttons to manage stuff like your inventory, but I don't want people to go into battles without having to prepare first. Mainly, like, I like the idea of it being you have like a small duffel of stuff you can access, maybe. So like maybe there's 3 or 4 items that you take in with you, but outside of that, it's going to take time to actually get into your bag and things like that. Yeah, I mean, I think we can work with this system because it's fairly simple. That, and the main reason I'm saying that is what you can do is you can essentially say, hey, chorus, I want you to stay right here. And then with the pathfinding system that they have implemented, essentially what we can do is we can have it say, if you are given this state, you will stay here and you will attack this enemy, or you will pursue enemies within this general area. However, you will also be called back, and then maybe keep that switch button, but also make sure that people know, hey, you can send the other character out and they will... the best way I can describe it, I recently played through Pokemon Violet. The Let's Go system from that game, where you can send a Pokemon out to battle other Pokemon. Think that, but instead of being essentially you just send them out to fight, you can issue commands with the D-pad. Because I like the idea of it being there's one button to split the two up, and then you use the D-pad to give the other commands, like I'm locked on this enemy, attack him, or... See, the only issue is how do we get this spell system to work? Because we can... I think at first I was going to say, oh, we can only assign like 3 spells at a time. But I think if you look at like the character abilities, so Chorus has 3 different elements. Symphonia has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different elements. Recall, I think that's more so a specific ability. That is, if you throw like a weapon, you can recall it back to you. But healing, wind, and shadow. So she has 3 elements. He has 3 elements. Okay, that works out well. So what we can essentially do is have it say, hey, read off of these 3. Oh, wait, no, she starts out with fire and ice. Fire, water, and ice. So she has 6. I did not think that through. Actually, let's... Well, no, because, yeah, no, I forgot. Water is ice. So you have to make it cold. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, never mind. She has 2 more than he does. But he has more physical skills that he can use. But my idea was we can keep that same system and really focus on it. What I like the idea of is I have it listed, I think, right here. Mission types, crafting, gathering NPCs. Those are all states. Turn will, okay, here we go. The turn holder will not pass on the turn if an elemental combat. So we can, let's take these and let's say that it will go into like a turn-based mode where you are pretty much just selecting your harmonics at that point. So it will enter the turn attack mode if an elemental combination has taken place, an enemy's guard was broken, an enemy's weakness is hit, every enemy on the field is afflicted with a state. A combo technique is used, so if there's a few things where it's going to be taking cues from a beat 'em up. So if you hit a specific attack button in order, because I like the idea of maybe we could have light and heavy, and your light's assigned to one weapon, your heavy's assigned to another. Actually, let me look at the weapons that we have for everyone. Yeah, her dagger throw. Yeah, because if I remember correctly, let's go and say we have our melee weapons. So for Symphonia, you obviously would have the daggers because that's her starting weapon. You have I don't want to pull the script up because that might spoil some things. What if let me do this. I'm gonna pull the script up on a different page. So let's go ahead and, if I told you this thing is nearly 200 pages, would you believe me? All right. Yeah, so Symphonia learns healing and Chorus learns light during the prologue. So I'm gonna go ahead and say here we go to melee weapons. So he starts out with the sword, ranged weapons. So for ranged, I think we can add in the guns for Chorus, like that's a definite. And then Symphonia, we have bow and arrow. The harmonic capsule device, I think I kind of want to leave that somewhere else. Small shield is an item that is, yeah, that's wind and electric, so that's not any. Yeah, Symphonia gets the claws. So I say, yeah, we give her daggers, we give her the claws, and Chorus. I think we should give him that HCD, so the harmonic capsule device. I think we can just give a different character some more like some different uses for it, or maybe a more in-depth system for it. Earth and Shadow. Okay, so both of those are bows. So Symphonia has 2 ranged weapons. Oh wait, no, she has the grappling hook too. So grappling hook. So I think we're about even right now on who gets what. Pre-assessment, yep. Crystal imbuement. Yeah, that's pretty much, it's going to be a precursor to another mechanic, so that doesn't. Pharmacology field guide, so field guides would show up under here. Oh, Symphonia's whistle, that's more so a specific item. Bullet types are fall under that too. Chorus gets the knuckle dusters. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you also got the axe earlier, so you would have the axe and the knuckle dusters under that. See here. So she has 2 and he has 3. I think we can throw one more in here. But I'm just trying to think what will fit. Actually, you know what? Let's put the shields in as melee weapons. Because I have an ideal for those. But yeah, the knuckle dusters for Chorus, that gives him... So essentially what we could do with that is we could say for each of these they have one that can go with both, like your heavy and your light, and one that can go with only one or the other. So essentially you would have 2 equipped at a time. So claws would only go on light and shields could only go on heavy over your heavy attack, and then your daggers can do both. So maybe give each of them like a unique heavy. Like for the daggers, I like the idea of that being your dagger throw, or maybe since it's dual wielding daggers, you use both. It's easier than having 2 unique movesets for each weapon, and honestly, that would make things more complicated. Yeah, so for Chorus, you have a sword, an axe, and knuckle dusters. So sword covers both, axe covers your heavy attacks, and knuckle dusters covers your light. Either that, or we could give them a distinct one for both. It's not the worst idea. That, and obviously for these, for the ranged weapons, we're going to have them play into the elemental system. The grappling hook's mostly just let's say that's like just gemstones actions. Yeah, the grappling hook, how that works is that's going to be unique in that it's a 2 input item, so you input 1, stab it, go out, 1, 2. Yeah, I kind of like where this is going, honestly. Yeah, because I feel like this gives us more than enough. Because if you look at like the cast here, it gives us room to experiment a lot. And with this, what I'm pretty much doing is I'm taking our... Yeah. So element ID and state ID. So it can combine elements based off the element ID. The issue with the state ID is our options are either go... Because we're going to have about 100 states in here, give or take. And if you look at just the amount of states that you have by default. So, wait, how many pages is it? Oh, this is 6. So, chorus is shoulder check, light harmonics, earth harmonics, sword skills. But, excuse me, I wasn't reading the right thing. If we look at just this, just your level 1 states, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. These both change based on the area you're in. This one's only AoE. You have a whole lot of them. And honestly, since 0 is going to be your normal state, the only other option we have is to go into the negatives. Because what we could do is we could say, take a look at this and try to figure out, because I like the idea of every state has an ID and you add the numbers together in a specific way to get them. Because here's the thing, it would make sense. This is 1, this is 2. If you have burn and wet, you get steamed. So that would be 12. Because that way the math just will be fairly easy. Because then say we have burn and sandy, and let's just say sandy's 6. 16. Excuse me, 61, 31, etc., etc. And then if we have the... Yeah, it works better if you go off the states. See, the only issue is if we, actually, you know what? No. If we remove 0 completely, then it doesn't become as much of an issue. But let's just say, like, 1, 2, 3. So, like, steamed, and then... frozen. Yeah, so we don't have any that go off of steamed. Yeah, level... Yeah, because we only have like 3 or 4 level 3 states. So... glass plus judgment. So, yeah, it's sandy and fire. Burn. Plus sandy equals glass. So, let's see here. Glass plus judgment. So, let's say judgment's 10. That would be 5, 10. Yeah, because that way it doesn't add an extra 0 in there. Because there's no way it would just immediately jump up to this one if we add in another 0 or something like that. Because that way it's not going to just jump from here to here. Because my fear was if we add another placement, like let's say this is state 10 and this is state 5, it will be 510 right here. But if we have it add like, let's just say state 5, 1, and 11, then we don't run into that issue. Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be essentially, because the main issue I have with like adding the IDs is, yeah. I mean, digital root's the only other option, but that's kind of useless in this situation, to be honest. For those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, digital root is essentially when you... So, like, if I had the number, like, 13, you would add 1 and 3 together to get 4. But that really wouldn't help here at all. Oh, so you can create a stack and stuff like that. I think we're going to be spending some time working on AI. But I think our primary thing that we should do is, with the AI, we should level stack it. So give it, rather than the AI working on a system where it's essentially, oh, read all these options and then if this, do this, I think we should give AI priorities. So, for example, with enemies, their priority will be to patrol this area, and that's going to be like their bottom priority. But if they see a character, then they're going to break rank from there, and they're going to go from patrolling to attacking the character. Or like an alert system where it's, if it's alert, it's going to essentially send a signal out to a whole bunch of other enemies and say, hey, this is the area where where the player was last seen, or something like that. Or maybe send out a essentially, I just want the enemy to be able to tell everyone else that they saw the player. mainly because it wouldn't make sense if they couldn't. That, and since bosses are usually going to be in their own arena, I want that wouldn't affect them too much. Because for bosses, my idea is we go more of a bullet hell route and have it be more so about avoiding bosses' attacks than essentially the bosses are, some of them will be more so tanks, but that gives you a good variety. That and various bosses using various arenas. Maybe we have a few where there's at least one that I want to do is a sniper tower approach, where it's a very long corridor-ridden map and you're trying to slowly work your way over to a specific enemy. See, I like the idea we go into that turn-based system if the player does something right, because that way if you're playing in single player, that gives you a moment to say, okay, we can go into this turn-based kind of thing. And if you're playing multiplayer, then it becomes a frantic dash to work with your teammate and be like, okay, stack this state on top of this state, and then we can get an elemental burst here. Because if I remember correctly, this goes up to... I think I limited myself to saying 3. Yeah, level 4 is the highest one that we have right now. And Resurrected's hard to do because that turns that will turn an enemy to your side briefly. But so what we have here is about, I want to say there's about 100 states or so that you can put into here. And level 2, that's just the easiest one to do. So, like, wind, for example, is twister, excuse me. Sand plus twister. So a few of these are also going to be based off environment. So I like the idea of having a few where it's, for a few of them, it's going to be based off collision. A few of them are going to be AoE spells. Pretty much for wind, it's only going to be AoE. And then there might be a few sub-spells. But the key issue we have is we can either have characters change them out by default, or what we can do for Chorus and Symphonia in the single-player campaign is we can have them both play off of each other in a different way, because I kind of like the idea of we take that whole elemental system or the light and heavy system and instead make it Chorus and Symphonia in single player. So instead of it being you press one button for light and one button for heavy, it's you press one button for Chorus, one for Symphonia. Instead of it being one button is instead of it being your harmonics button has one fire off harmonics, it's going to be, unless they're both acting separately, they both do. I don't know, maybe have a command button as well. So, but because I think if we get, Symphonia has 6 elements, and I think Chorus has 3. And the thing is, water turns to ice when it's cold, so we have things to keep in mind, like temperature of the map. So I say we have it act within a range from. We could use Kelvin as the easy way to do it, because 0 degrees Kelvin's the actual one, or we can just kind of make a system up. But I like the idea of it's -1 is cold. -2 is freezing. -3 is like cold enough to damage you. -2 is cold enough to freeze. -1 is just kind of cold, so it's like you. Certain attacks are going to do less damage, but it's not going to be to the point where it majorly affects that, like, all water spells are ice or yada yada. And then 0 is going to be completely neutral. 1's going to be exactly the same thing I said, but for fire, like kind of your hotter elements. Or if you try to do ice attacks and that kind of. Because the thing is, with fire, you can still do it in colder environments. It's just harder to do. But with ice, you can't really keep it in a hot environment without properly caring for it. Same thing for a few of these other... actually, excuse me. With it's going to be kind of a little hot. Fire attacks do more damage. Second level is going to be... it does more damage to you. excuse me, second level is going to be you can't do ice attacks. If it's in the negatives, you can do ice. If it's in 0 to, I would say 2 or 3, 2, you can do water, and then if it hits 3, it just evaporates. So you're stuck with everything but water, and you're taking damage. But that would kind of be like a good way to implement it, is a few of them are tied to that system. I could give Symphonia both water, fire, and ice as her default elements, and then just say... Actually, yeah, I'll probably do that. Just give her fire and ice, because we have one character who uses water. So then we could say, look, she can use water, but... Actually, flip between the two. That might be a better idea. Because I think we do have only one state where it's like wet, and where it combines the water and the freezing. Frozen, burn, dirty, judgment. Yeah, so this one's like an AoE only. So if you use an ice spell and what, that actually works a little better, because water and ice would be more readily available in different environments. So maybe it's based off something you need to do character wise, because I want to keep a few of these, and I like the idea of Symphonia being your more complex character, whereas Chorus is hit hard, more physical based. Symphonia is going to have essentially saying, look, if you're playing with a friend, Symphonia might be the better option for you, because she has a more complex moveset, and her playstyle is she's the one with the heals. She's also the one who has less health and does less damage by default, so Chorus is the one who you can be more reckless with. But with other modes, like, I like the idea of a 4-player multiplayer being its kind of own thing, mainly because you need to fiddle with the camera for that. I want to keep UI to a minimum, and I think doing it real time is the best way to do that. That and having the character kind of follow you at the hip, and then you can send them out and give them commands. It kind of works well. That way, if you're playing single player, it's not frustrating, but it's not exactly the most ideal circumstance either, because you're having to switch between them to actually try to play off the elemental system. It's just mainly trying to find that balance of, I want to incentivize multiplayer heavily. Like, it wouldn't feel right to me to say multiplayer is not going to be one of the core focuses or pillars of this game, but yet at the same time, since it is an RPG, and there are circumstances where I know people won't want to or be able to play it in multiplayer, I don't want to force it either. Look at the untitled doc here. Yeah, I feel like using player variables is probably our best way to do it. Because what we can do is we can actually have our UI either sit at the bottom, sit over at the side, and then since you have quite a few moments where it's going to go into cutscenes, that's going to kind of give characters some time to relax. We can work a little bit on the open world with that too. Because my initial idea was it goes turn by turn, and things like your MP will replenish after each turn. And I still kind of want to do that in a way, because I would like to combine the RPG feedback loop with how people feel about combo systems. So it's like, if you hit a high combo, I want that same feeling if you hit a whole bunch of these elements back to back. And that was part of what the turn system was actually based on, because with that the interplay is much easier to do on a one-person to one-person basis. Yeah, but that's honestly that is what we could do, is have the AI have some basic ideas of what to do. So like, if you press to guard and then press to stay, the AI will stay there guarding. If you press attack and press the send out button, the AI will go out and attack whatever enemy you're locked onto. I'm just trying to think of ways to make sure that the AI is easy to control for people, because the last thing I want is for people to say the AI is the reason I can't play this game. But I don't want to give that AI so much ability that it's essentially ruining the game and playing the game for you. I mean, I do kind of like the idea of being able of when you're both together, maybe since since you're playing with one player, you are limited to an extent with what you can do, because I don't want to completely lock people out of, like, I don't want to lock them out of this entire branch tree, because this is going to be something that takes a lot of development time and fits the theming perfectly, and it's going to be core of the battle system. So if we make it so they can't do this, then there's kind of an issue. Actually, one more thing I did want to check. I think there was only one state where it kind of snacks. Yeah. Bleed. That's going to be a more interesting state to work with. So if we go into that state system later, we can probably make it not too big an issue. But we're going to have it put the bigger number first, then the smaller number. Or we're going to have it say, look, if entity number 10 and entity number 6 meet, it's going to transform into entity number 106. If entity number yada yada, because that way we can at least have a system on our end to do it, and then maybe we can throw in a few specific things under different IDs. Because the elemental system, that's going to very much be its own thing. That makes it's going to be kind of a big thing that intermingles with a lot of systems, but then certain characters might have their own specific gimmicks that either play into that system or don't. Heck, with the guest characters, I actually like the idea of the third character literally just, that's going to be the one that goes on their own, and you can't really control what they do. So you have to make sure to either keep an eye on them, or sometimes they'll be the ones who are running after enemies and just attacking them. Some of them might have more so a guard idea. I mean, honestly, the thing is, Chorus and Symphonia are supposed to be the core of your party. I don't want it to feel like you have to rely on any of the other characters, really. But at the same time, I need to make those characters worthwhile if they're going to appear. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll probably have a few of them start at like different areas of the map. That, and we can essentially have enemies and various other entities do specific things. I like the idea of also various states, because if the only issue with mixing it purely with a beat 'em up is all of this is going to be a little too much for just a beat 'em up. Because if we make it like a top-down game, I want to have those bigger maps. I want to have those moments where it's more exploration-based and less combat-based. So a simple turn combat on and off switch would probably be the best approach for that. Maybe take the Xenoblade approach, where it's player-driven, so you have one control scheme when you're out of battle and one control scheme when you're in. I think that's probably what we're going to go for. Because that way we can give characters like Chorus, Symphonia, they have a control scheme when they're in battle, they have one when they're out, and then maybe give certain characters unique gimmicks that play off of it. The only other issue I'm thinking of is items and inventory. Because I want to keep the whole, every character gets like 3 inventory slots, but it's going to be harder to incentivize people. Actually, you know what? I think I just realized it. A time meter might be perfect for that. So a kind of thing where if you have to build it up with both characters, like Chorus has half the meter, Symphonia has half, and then when both of them are ready to activate it. Like one side of the controller works for chorus, one works for Symphonia, and then when you're playing multiplayer, when you press that button, it activates for it pretty much calls for the other person to activate it. Let me see what I have here. Yeah, guard being its own button, I do kind of want. I think we can make X a skill. If we make X like our skill button, then we can have actually, you know what? Have it be pressing in the stick. Because that's not something that both sides already have, and that way we don't need to move things around. So if you press the stick in, it activates your time burst mode, and if both pressed it at the same time, it's going to slow it down, and then you can do that more complicated stuff. And then this combo system comes into play. So the enemies aren't not moving, it's just that all of them have their steps pretty much slowed. While you, and I don't know, maybe even it slows the frame rate down just a tiny bit. I just find that's a more interesting way to like, makes a way more interesting effect. I do want to have it so that when the player is killed, rather than it like with enemies, I would prefer for it to create some kind of a I would prefer for it to like destroy them or put a body there at some, if possible. But honestly, I feel like the key to it is we just need to get a lot of this groundwork down, and it's just today I really don't have the. I need to do more research before I jump into this AI system. But I think that's the way to do it, so I'm just going to write that down here at the bottom. So here we go. Time meter. And have chorus, Symphonia, press in both sticks to activate, and yeah, I feel like that might be the best method, because that way you get that, you still can get those brief moments where it's maybe like during boss battles it builds up differently. And actually for bosses, I kind of like the idea of it just straight up becoming that's like your turning point where you can do damage. Definitely going to add in some kind of countering and guarding system as well, because I want that to be a fair, I want that to kind of be its own thing. So I like the idea of like chorus having his, like, both of them have their own little gimmicks for it. Part of the reason why I gave Symphonia the shield, for example, is she's supposed to be able to bounce things like bullets off of it or deflect harmonics, mainly because I mentioned she is the more complex playstyle. The harmonic capsule device might be changed out to something else, though. I mean, I mainly got it for orchestra as a weapon. I kind of like the idea of leaving that as his. I'm trying to think what we have that could be. Maybe give orchestra the full one and then just give chorus, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something fairly basic we can give him. where I can just go in and rewrite it. Because the more and more I think about it, gameplay-wise, it doesn't make sense for him to get such a complex item when the complexity is usually in Symphonia's moveset. Because, like, if you look at Symphonia, she has the daggers and claws are fairly straightforward, I would say. Granted, the claws are probably going to be a little different as well. And then you're, of course, going to have movement mechanics that I think I listed here. Yeah, because we can combine it with the shorter form puzzles, too, to kind of balance it out. Because then you have these brief puzzle sections in larger combat levels. Actually, yeah, because then we can use that time attack mode, and that would be perfect for MP, where it's like it refills your MP meter pretty much immediately, so you just start fighting with that MP meter. Because Chorus is going to have some unique ability. Chorus's main abilities are going to be grabbing or something where it's like designed to interplay with Symphonia doing something more complex. So if you're playing with friends, then it's like giving you the option for it. Initially, I was considering letting people choose 2 other characters once they hit a certain point in the story. But then I realized it would be kind of a hassle. I might make it more complex at some point, but then since Fusion is going to come in later, it might be good to introduce that in the next game to have 4-player multiplayer rather than just 2. But at least for right now, I think 2 is a good number. Because that way, if I was playing with someone, I can say, here, you take this controller. So we would need drop-in, drop-out co-op. So some way for the game to pretty much detect, is there a controller there? And then if it is, it's going to change it to, it's going to assign it to whichever character hasn't been picked. But yeah, let's say I kind of like the idea of, let's do some UI planning. So I'm going to open Paint really quickly so we can do this. And, well, I use Paint.net usually, so it's fine. So I'm going to start by saying that our gameplay area is going to be all down here. So this is just kind of our default UI. I would say we have space right here where we can put stuff like the character's health and all that. And then yeah, player health for both sides could be right there. I like the idea of courses in red, Symphonias in blue, and then maybe the MP bars shared between the 2 of them. Honestly, that would kind of make sense, because then you can't just tell your AI partner to go spam spells, or else you're both kind of screwed. But because then it could go beyond just a switch mechanic to saying that switching for specific abilities, or maybe if we get to that point, putting in some kind of quick command where you can say, hey, use this spell or use this one. But let's just say, yeah, this is going to be, up here is going to be all your health and all that information. And then if we go and we're talking about stuff like text, I like the idea if we put our text boxes like right here. You know, obviously less opacity, so you could still see some of what's going on here. Or the other option is, because I want some form of voice acting. So our other actual option, and I think this might be the more interesting one. Let's do, yeah, we need to go ahead and change that out. Draw a filled shape with outline, and I'm just going to go ahead and reverse these. So let's just say we have this as our text boxes. So our text boxes could just appear like on the side on either person's. So then like if Symphonia is talking, we have a text box like up here. If Choruses, we have one right here. And then if whoever they're talking, if they're talking to each other, it's going to be two red and blues. And then like say, I think Orchestra's probably going to be purple. So we have like Orchestra have a purple one right here, or Ricky J have a beige one. So it just kind of goes back and forth between the two. So then we can have those little banter moments where it's like Chorus and Symphonia are talking up here. I just don't want it to distract from the game, because the main issue with it putting anything more than that would be it takes up a lot of the screen. So I would say we have 2 or 3 different systems for it. And then obviously if you pause, I think you should be able to do things like change your settings. But I think for Overworld, it's going to immediately cut that out and mostly have a blank UI. Maybe just give it a UI option of like immersive, where it cuts the UI completely, and then another one where it is more so I would say like a smaller UI, where it just has your very basic information like levels and all that listed. So maybe like up here you have like your character information, little character cards, and it's going to go like 1, 2, 3. And then your MP meter would go, yeah, let's just say, because you only have 2 characters in the main game and your other one is AI, we go 2 right here, both of those connect, and then we have 1 over here where both of those connect. So, and then right here in the middle, that gives us space to add a boss. So if like, say, Kaijiro, we could put Kaijiro's face image right here, and then we could put the health bar for him. And then like for each character, I say we put like a face image that changes based on things like health. It would, like a little face image here changes based off health, obviously. Maybe we add a little state icon like right up here. Here, let's actually zoom in, because that'll make this easier to explain. So let's see right here. So we would have like a little, gonna change this to a yellow just so we can easily see it. So we would have like the player's little face right here. I'm just gonna see if there's a very simple one. Yeah, so it's like we would have, no, that doesn't look like a face. And I see we have that take up like a decent size of it. Yeah, maybe we'll put the player all the way over here, so we have like a little player portrait right there. Then we have a little health meter, so that's going to be like right here, and a little bit of a square. No, that's not what I meant. Or do I need to actually move it? Yeah, so that's your health meter. Granted, these colors are probably going to change. And then you would have like a fusion meter that goes in between the two, like so. So like your fusion meter goes between the two. Character has stuff like that, and then I'm going to do, yeah, let's keep that. And then we're going to have a little orange that tells you like your state. So like your little state icon would be like over in the corner. Actually, let's put states like right up here. Oh yeah, because that way what we can do is we can have state 1, state 2, state 3, and then put your buffs down here as well. Actually, move it over this way just a little bit more. Perfect. So like your state icons are right here. Put your boosts right here. So put that as a blue. This is just going to be kind of like your normal. All right, let me go ahead and do one more thing so I know what this is for future reference. Perfect. All right, so it's going to be like your player icon, your health. The fusion bar is going to be right there, and then let's say your MP is also fused, so MP bar is going to be like this. So a little bit smaller. It's not going to be as big. And then maybe something as simple as saying, hey, when we, right, look at that. See, so it's going to be, you essentially have another one right next to it, and they both connect in the exact same way. And then if you have a guest character, you go over here and you do the same thing, but you don't have the, I would say you give them all their meters, but it doesn't fuse to anything, like it's just their own thing. Yeah, I think that works. And then maybe we could put your items up there too. So let's go with that would be a good symbol for that. Yeah. So for your items, I kind of want to make that a pink. Yeah, purple, because we don't have that yet. See here. Control C, Control V. Oh, I just need to put a new shape in there. Yeah, so you would have like 1, 2, 3. And that's your items right there. Okay. So you could put like states, buffs, items. It's a fairly simple way to do it. Okay. And we have the character portraits because, yeah. And that gives you like all of this space down here to do whatever you need with. So I would say we have stuff like our, maybe just a small bit of UI that you can turn on and off here in the corner. Like nothing too complicated, just a basic, if you look in the corner down here, it's going to be your objectives listed like right there. Oh, Blossom, are you okay? I'm gonna leave here in a second. My cat wants some attention, and I'm gonna give it to her because she's been a really good girl today. But you have this right here, so that's gonna be like your objectives, and then you could maybe have a few, like, I guess have your stats maybe listed over here. somewhere. Actually, yeah, stats could be maybe shared between the two. So I would say you have those two, and then your stats go in the middle, over where the boss's health bar would be. So I think we've got enough today. Anyway, just gonna do a file, save as. Desktop UI draft.png. Alright. Because what I'm going to probably do is when I get better assets for it, I'm going to make a mock-up of the UI and put it over the game and see how well it works. Because I like the idea of the UI going, like, doing what Xenoblade or Pokemon or pretty much any other turn-based RPG will do, where it fades out when you're not in battle. So you're not going to see any of this. You're just going to maybe see this one thing in the corner. And even then, I like the idea of you can press, like, you know, minus or something like that to turn this off. But yeah, then we can have, let's check this out with little chat bubbles. So like we have one character say something over here, and we have another say something. Here. I kind of want to rip one thing from Star Fox. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to talk about this and then I'm going to go. But I want to rip the Star Fox UI thing where it has like the little character portrait, like the ba-da-da-ba-da. I want that. I really want that, but I'm trying to think where we would put it. We could have it actually be the character portrait up there, but then people aren't going to look at it. If health is at 0, then it should give you pretty much a no, you're not good for this. See, our issue is what do we do with the bottom here? Because I like the idea of keeping that for like battles, in battle conversation, and then maybe having the screen fade and go to a more, you can tell who's talking by context, but the subtitles are black with black border with white text on. I want some scenes to have way more effort put in. I want some scenes to be very obviously there for story reasons, but there's not too much of this whole UI in your face. But I feel like this is a good start, so I'm just gonna file, save, because if we put, let me go ahead and do one thing just so people know what I'm about to do. So let's say we have this, and what I like to do is I like to fill this in with a different color. So all this space, that's our game. And what I'm going to do is I usually will take a screenshot and throw it behind there when I have the time. And you can check, like, hey, how much of my game am I missing? The only issue with putting these over to the side is that then you can't actually see what characters are. You can't see anything over there. I don't want to put it on top of the character either, because then you can't see the character saying anything. I mean, maybe have it appear down here at the bottom. But yeah. Anyway. Till next time.